Hey guys, today I'll be taking a look at the recently updated 538 forecast for the 2022 Senate elections, and we'll be taking a look at this forecast every couple of weeks leading up to the midterms in November, and how they forecast the balance of power in the upper chamber for the next 2 years. So looking at this forecast here, they currently give the Republicans a 52% chance at flipping back to the Senate, and they give the Democrats a 48% chance at retaining control of the upper chamber. So basically how this forecast works is that they do 40,000 simulations every single day, and these simulations are based on polling data, fundraising, past voting patterns, as well as expert ratings. And so based on these objective factors, they perform these simulations, and currently the Democratic Party has a 48% chance of winning, because in 48% of the 40,000 forecasts, the Democrats come out on top with at least 50 seats, and of course in 52% of these forecasts, the Republicans come out on top with at least 51 seats. And so looking at the map here, the Democratic Party is actually favored to retain control if we look at the forecasts in the individual states. If we plot this out on the map, the Democratic Party ends up with 50 seats. And so in this video, we'll of course be going over every one of the individual races in the 538 forecast for all of those states. And if we look at the amount of seats each party is expected to win based on their 40,000 simulations, the most likely outcome currently is that the Republicans win 51 seats. There is a 14% chance of this happening. However, there is a 13.8% chance that the Democrats win 50 seats, and that is the second most likely scenario. So basically what's going on here is the Senate is going to be very, very close nonetheless, but if we look at the breakdown of the simulated results, it will be somewhere around the Democrats winning 51 seats to the Republicans winning 53. So this range is very significant as it goes from a strong Democratic victory to a strong victory for the Republicans. So the Senate currently is definitely a toss-up, but in this video we'll be going over, of course, this specific map and how it adds up for each party. So looking at this map here, obviously it's not the best thing to look at. It's very hard to see which states are actually going for each party. So I have filled in the solid states on this map, and with the solid states filled in, both parties have 45 seats, and this again just cements how competitive these races are going to be. And so there are 10 toss-up races. These are based on the ones that we've been talking about for over a year now, and it's really going to be these 10 races that end up deciding the balance of power in the upper chamber for the next 2 years. So starting off with the likely states, we have the states in which either party has between a 75 to 95% chance at victory, and the most solid likely state on this map is the state of Florida. This will be a race between Marco Rubio and Val Demings. Marco Rubio is running for a third term in office, and Val Demings is all but guaranteed to win the Democratic primary in just a couple of weeks. And Val Demings currently is a member of the U.S. House, serving as the representative for the 10th District of Florida, and she currently only has a 7% chance at winning this race, while Marco Rubio has a 93% chance at winning his third 6-year term in office. I mean, this is a far cry from how competitive the race was in 2018, when Bill Nelson lost the race as a Democratic incumbent by a margin of just 0.12% to Rick Scott. So Florida is not going to be nearly as competitive as it was in 2018, and probably not as competitive as it was in 2016 either. Currently, according to this forecast, Marco Rubio is expected to win by a double-digit margin, and I mean, that is basically what all of the most recent polls have been suggesting. So the state of Florida is going to be likely for the Republican Party based on the 538 forecast as of right now. Now moving on to the state of Colorado, this is going to be another race in which one party is going to dominate over the other, even though the race is quote-unquote competitive. In the state of Colorado, Michael Bennet currently has an 87% chance at winning his third term in office as well. He will be running against Joe Dia. Joe Dia recently won the Republican nomination, and he represents the more moderate wing of the GOP. So the state of Colorado is not going to be very competitive at all this election cycle. Currently, Michael Bennet is expected to win by just under 10%. If we look at the 2016 race, though, Michael Bennet did only win by a margin of around 5 percentage points, so not exactly the strongest margin for the Democratic incumbent even in 2016, but as the state of Colorado has continued to shift to the right, Michael Bennet is going to have no trouble winning his third term in office. Of course, Joe Biden won the state by a margin of 14% in 2020, and Michael Bennet leads by 13% in the most recent poll release. So Colorado is also going to be likely on this map alongside of Florida, but for the Democratic Party. And now moving on to the state of Ohio, we have two more likely states left on this map. So in the state of Ohio, currently J.D. Vance has an 84% chance of winning against Tim Ryan, despite the numbers showing something completely different. If we look at the polls that have been released for this race, Tim Ryan has led in basically all of the most recent polls that have been released. So this is a very competitive race, even though JD Vance is so favored. The only reason why JD Vance has such a high percent chance of winning is because of the fact that this is the state of Ohio, a state that Donald Trump won by 8% in the last two presidential elections. Even in 2016, Rob Portman won Ohio by 21%, and of course, he is the retiring incumbent that will be leaving office and allowing JD Vance to be the new Republican nominee. However, in 2018, the Democrats were able to win this seat for a third time, with Sherrod Brown winning against Jim Renacci by a margin of 7%. Now, Tim Ryan is not Sherrod Brown. Tim Ryan is actually more moderate than Sherrod Brown, but still, Sherrod Brown has been a staple in Ohio statewide politics for the last 3 decades. Tim Ryan simply does not have the sort of name recognition and experience in Ohio that Sherrod Brown has had for such a long time, and Sherrod Brown won a seat before Ohio was as red of a state as it is today, and so that also makes it easier for him in upcoming elections. But in 2022, if we actually look at the light version of this forecast based solely on the polling numbers, Tim Ryan is actually favored to win this race and has a 52% chance of winning. It is only the deluxe model that puts JD Vance ahead, and this is mainly a result of the race ratings being very favorable for JD Vance. So Ohio is also going to be likely on this map, despite the Republicans performing pretty poorly there in the recent polls. And so now, with the likely states covered, we have just 6 races left in the states of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. These 4 are the toss-up races, and we have 2 lean races in the states of Wisconsin and New Hampshire, 1 for each party. So starting off with the state of Wisconsin, where the Republican Party currently has a 71% chance of winning, with Ron Johnson as the 2-term incumbent running for a 3rd term in office. We have a lot of 2-term incumbents running for a 3rd term this November, but in the state of Wisconsin, Ron Johnson is clearly favored to defeat Mandela Barnes, who is the current lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, serving alongside Tony Evers. If we look at this race here, Ron Johnson really is not the most popular incumbent. He is relatively unpopular in the state of Wisconsin. Mandela Barnes is okay. He has a similar approval rating to that of Tony Evers. Tony Evers is in a very close race himself, but he is actually favored to win his re-election, while Mandela Barnes is currently expected to lose the Senate election against Ron Johnson. Simply put, the main reasons why Ron Johnson is winning currently is the fact that he is the incumbent, and Wisconsin really is not the most democratic state in the country at all. It is very much a purple state, a state that barely voted for Joe Biden, and Ron Johnson, as the incumbent, is likely to pick up most independent votes, and of course, the national environment simply is not that favorable for the Democratic Party right now. If we look at the popular vote margin, though, currently, Ron Johnson is expected to win around 52% of the vote, 47.8% for Mandela Barnes, so that would be a lean margin of victory right now for the Republican. But in the most recent poll release, this is the only poll released, Mandela Barnes does lead by 2%, but I do expect Ron Johnson to lead in future polls when we get more polling data. So right now, Ron Johnson is currently expected to win his re-election to a 3rd term. If we look at the model based on polls alone, still, Ron Johnson is still favored to win with a 68% chance of winning. So right now, Wisconsin is going to be the first lean state on this map. And of course, the other lean state is going to be New Hampshire, where Maggie Hassan has a 70% chance of winning, so very similar to Wisconsin. Now, both of these races are races in which we have incumbents of one particular party, and these races are going to be competitive nonetheless, but the incumbent party is still heavily favored to win, and in all likelihood, they are going to end up coming out on top. Even though Maggie Hassan barely won in 2016, it was a race in which she was running against a Republican incumbent, that being Kelly Ayotte, who was elected in 2010. Of course, that was the big red wave year for the Republicans. They were able to make significant gains in both the Senate and the House. But 2016 was a year that was a little bit more favorable for the Democrats, and so of course, Kelly Ayotte lost the Senate seat for the GOP. This was one of the major flips for the Democratic Party that year, and this was the closest election of the year, with Maggie Hassan only winning by just a little bit over 1,000 votes. And so in 2022, she will likely be facing either Chuck Morse or Donald Boldeau. Both of these candidates are the 2 frontrunners for the Republican nomination. However, currently FiveThirtyEight does see Boldeau as the frontrunner, and he only has a 30% chance at winning. If we look at the expected margin, it is much larger than it was in 2016, but still a very close race is currently forecasted, a 4.4% margin in favor of Maggie Hassan, and Maggie Hassan has led in every single poll that has been released against Donald Boldeau. And of course, this comes after in 2020, Jean Shaheen won her re-election by 16% against Corky Messner. So New Hampshire does have the ability to be very solid for the Democratic Party, but 2022 does not seem like the year that is going to happen. And in the state of New Hampshire, it will also be lean, but this time for the Democratic Party. And so now, of course, we only have 4 states left on this map: Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. These are the 4 states that will matter the absolute most, with the Republicans currently holding 49 seats and 47 for the Democrats. Now, if the Democrats want to retain the Senate majority that they currently hold, they're going to have to win 3 out of the 4 remaining races. They currently have incumbents in Nevada, Arizona, and Georgia, so the incumbency factor is going to help them in these 3 states, but the Republicans do hold on to Pennsylvania without an incumbent running for re-election, as Pat Toomey will not be running again this November. So things are not looking as terrible for Democrats as they really could be. If they can win Pennsylvania, they can't afford to lose 1 out of these 3 remaining races in which they do have incumbents, but all 4 of these races are highly competitive, so the Senate really could go either way at this point. So starting off with the tilt races, I have the state of Arizona, where Mark Kelly currently has a 58% chance at defeating Blake Masters. At this point, Blake Masters is almost guaranteed to win the Republican nomination. Yes, his margin is not that big in the GOP primary, but still, he is pretty much expected to win the race no matter what at this point. His polling average is 29%. He is by far the frontrunner in this race. If we look at the graph here, he does have the momentum on his side as well, with him leading in all of the most recent polls. And of course, he did get the endorsement of Donald Trump, which will help him out a lot as well. Blake Masters has led in all of the most recent polls that have been released for the Arizona GOP primary. This race has gone back and forth between a lot of the candidates for the past year, but Blake Masters, it seems, is going to come out on top in the Republican primary and become the Republican candidate to challenge incumbent Mark Kelly, who of course only won his race in 2020 as a result of that special election in which he defeated Republican incumbent Martha McSally. But looking at the 538 forecast, Mark Kelly has a 58% chance of winning. He is doing very well in the polls. If we look at this forecast based solely on the polling data, Mark Kelly has a 71% chance at winning his re-election. So Mark Kelly at this point is probably the most safe out of the 3 incumbent Democrats in the 3 remaining races. So Arizona is going to be lean for the Democratic Party. Now, moving on to the state of Georgia, we have another very competitive race here that Democrats currently hold the seat in, and this, of course, is Raphael Warnock, who holds the Georgia Senate seat after winning it in the 2021 runoff against Kelly Loeffler after the 2020 general election. And so this time around, Raphael Warnock will face another very tough election against Herschel Walker, mainly because the state of Georgia is very purple, and Republicans had controlled it for decades before the Democratic Party won both Senate seats here, and Joe Biden won it on the presidential level in 2020. So looking at this race here, Raphael Warnock currently has just a 46% chance at winning his re-election, while there is a 54% chance that Herschel Walker flips the seat. Looking at the odds for both parties and how they've changed over time, the overall trend is that the numbers have gone up for Raphael Warnock, but they were not as high as they were at the end of the month of June. And if we look at the polling data, though, it has been pretty good for the Democrats, although Walker has led in some of the polls released, but the polls in Georgia have been very accurate in the last couple of presidential elections on average, as well as the last couple of Senate elections. They were very accurate in 2020, they were accurate in 2016 as well. Even for the Georgia governor's race, the polls were not too far off, so the polls in Georgia are pretty good in the state. And so if we look at the model based on polls alone, Warnock is actually favored to win his re-election. So right now the numbers are looking good for Warnock, but he is in a very, very competitive race nonetheless. And so right now 538 does project it to be a coin toss, but with Walker having a very, very slight edge. So Georgia is going to be the first tilt state on this map for the GOP. So now, if Democrats want to hold on to their Senate majority, they're going to have to win both races in Nevada and Pennsylvania. And right now, according to the 538 forecast, they do come out on top in both of these states. So starting off with Pennsylvania, currently John Fetterman has a 52% chance at winning this race. We've gone over this race a lot in the last couple of weeks, but Mehmet Oz has turned out really to just not be that great of a candidate. He has not even been in the state over the last couple of weeks. I believe he's been in the state of Missouri where he lives, and so John Fetterman has not been that active on the campaign trail either, as of course he has had a stroke and has been in the hospital since the Democratic primary. So John Fetterman and Mehmet Oz both are not having that large of a presence in the state despite the election being less than 4 months away. And so looking at the latest polls here, John Fetterman does do very well against Mehmet Oz. All 3 of these polls released in the month of June, and if we look at this forecast based solely on the polling data, I mean, you'll see that John Fetterman has a 77% chance of winning, and the reason why Democrats only have a 52% chance of winning overall, despite having such good numbers, is because this would be a flip for them, and that does make it a lot more difficult. But right now, based on the situation John Fetterman is in, he is doing very well in this race. So Pennsylvania currently is tilt for the Democratic Party. Arizona was tilt as well. I made a mistake there putting it as a lean state, but Arizona and Pennsylvania are both going to be tilt states, as the Democratic Party has a less than 60% chance at winning the races in both those states. And so now we have just one more state left, and that of course is the state of Nevada, where currently Catherine Cortez Masto has a 51% chance at defeating Adam Laxalt. According to FiveThirtyEight as well as myself, Nevada, I believe, is also going to be the most competitive race of the year and the closest margin at the end of the day, whether it goes for the Republicans or the Democrats. Both candidates are very much in this race. It's pretty much almost a pure toss-up at this point. Catherine Cortez Masto is running for her second term in office after defeating Joe Heck by 2.4% in 2016. She is not the strongest of incumbents in the state. Steve Sisolak won by a larger margin in 2016, and of course in 2010, Harry Reid won by a much larger margin than Catherine Cortez Masto in 2016. But this time around, Catherine Cortez Masto will be facing off against Adam Laxalt, who was the Republican gubernatorial candidate in 2018, who lost to Steve Sisolak. So both of these candidates right now are expected to be in a very tight race, and the overall margin will be 48.2 to 48 in favor of the Democrats according to this forecast. The polling data has also been all over the place for both candidates, with both of them leading in recent polls. However, Catherine Cortez Masto has recently taken the lead in the polling average. If we look at this forecast based solely on the polling data, Catherine Cortez Masto only has a 56% chance of winning. So this race is going to be just super close. And right now, according to this forecast, though, it will be tilt for the Democratic Party. So according to the FiveThirtyEight forecast map, currently the Democrats will win 50 seats, hold on to their majority, and 50 for the Republicans. And of course, I will be updating you guys anytime that big changes are made to this forecast. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.